in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, has affirmed that no force in the world can put pressure on Algeria, affirming that the country has reached a point of no return to fiercely defend its sovereignty. And dozens of Palestinians have been killed and others were seriously injured in new massacres perpetrated by Zionist occupation forces in Jabalia refugee camp in the north part of Gaza. And Palestine's Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki has emphasized the urgent need to stop the Israeli aggression against the Palestinian people, decrying the positions of some countries that have not changed their stance after 41 days of Israeli aggression. And those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune has chaired a meeting with economic entrepreneurs at the Abdelatif Rahal International Conference Center in Algiers to mark the end of the Entrepreneurship Days. The meeting took place in the presence of senior government officials, members of the government, state executives, as well as heads of companies and industrial groups, both public and private. Shortly before the opening of the meeting, the President visited the stands of public and private companies representing various sectors of activity, as well as the stands of young entrepreneurs holding projects and entrepreneurs from the national community abroad taking part in this event. The President of the Republic has affirmed on this occasion that no force in the world can put pressure on Algeria, affirming that the country has reached a point of no return to fiercely defend its sovereignty.
الدولة نتاعكم راكم عارفينها اليوم ما عدا القوة الإلهية القاهرة ما فيش قوة في العالم اللي تقدر تضغط على الجزائر. إذن الجزائر وصلت اليوم نقطة لا رجوع في الدفاع بشراسة على السيادة نتاعها.
The President of the Republic also reaffirmed support for all investment projects that create wealth and jobs, expressing the state's support for economic operators and project leaders.
Je vous encourage à aller très très loin. Je vous encourage aussi à créer des sociétés de production. عندكم المنيعة, عندكم أدرار, عندكم أولف, عين صالح. Là où vous voulez, تفضلوا. Vous êtes dans la bonne voie, la très bonne voie. Très très bonne voie. ما تخلي حتى واحد يعقدكم. Je vais dire peut-être حاجة كبيرة, mais on va vous décourager aussi. Parce qu'il n'y a pas que كاش غير الناس اللي تبغي الخير للبلاد ولكم.
The Entrepreneurship Days, organized by the Economic Renewal Council from 14 to 16 in November under the slogan Entrepreneurship at the Heart of Algeria's Economic Renewal, are designed to bring together young project holders with companies and investors. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, highlighted from London as part of his working visit to the United Kingdom the efforts of the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, who operated structural changes for national community abroad. In a speech delivered during a meeting with representatives of the national community in the United Kingdom, Mr. Attaf has specified that Algeria had experienced over the last 3 years a process of in-depth reforms, having in all areas without exception. The Minister of Foreign Affairs also and the National Committee Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has held talks earlier with the British Minister of Transport, Mark Harper, as part of his working visit to the United Kingdom. The talks focused on ways and means of developing and strengthening maritime and air transport between the two countries, as well as bilateral cooperation in other areas such as artificial intelligence and the construction of railway lines. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and the Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, Army General Said Chengriha, has visited the headquarters of the companies CATIC and ELINC in Beijing on the 5th day of his official visit to China. These companies specialize in the manufacture of aircraft and aeronautical equipment and in the innovation of electronic and cyber defense techniques and systems, respectively. The Army General was given a presentation of the company's products, which include various types of aircraft such as search and rescue aircraft, firefighting bombers, helicopters, and reconnaissance aircraft. You still listen to Radio Algeria International and to the Palestinian Authority issue now. Dozens of Palestinians were martyred and others were seriously injured on Thursday evening in new massacres perpetrated by Zionist occupation forces in the Jabalia refugee camp in the north of the Gaza Strip. According to local Palestinian sources quoted by the Wafa agency, occupation warplanes bombed the residential area in Jabalia, causing dozens of martyrs. Videos shared on social networks showed that citizens and rescue teams tried to remove the bodies of martyrs and wounded from under the bombed houses. In addition, the Indonesian hospital has announced that it is now out of service because of the Zionist bombardments. In the south of the Gaza Strip, 7 Palestinian citizens were killed in air raids by the occupation forces targeting a house. In the same context, the Red Crescent Association has said that its teams are still besieged in Al Ahli Hospital in the Al Zaytun neighborhood of Al Zaytun in the city of Gaza. The association said that there were a number of martyrs and wounded in the courtyard of the hospital. You still listen to Radio Algeria International, and Palestine's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates, Riyad al-Maliki, has emphasized the urgent need to stop the Israeli aggression against the Palestinian people in Gaza, protect civilians, and force displacement, and facilitate the return of displaced Palestinians to their homes. Al-Maliki's statement were made during a meeting today with his Irish counterpart, Michael Martin, and the accompanying delegation at the ministry headquarters in Ramallah. Al-Maliki pointed out that the brutal Israeli aggression against the Gaza Strip targets every corner of the region, leaving no safe place within the territory. He highlighted that the Israeli occupation has exploited the pretext of self-defense to commit massacres, resulting in the loss of more than 11,000 Palestinian lives, the majority being children and women. He said Gaza is also facing starvation, displacement, and widespread destruction, all of which constitute flagrant violations of international humanitarian and human rights law. The foreign minister decried the positions of some countries that have not changed their stance even after 41 days of Israeli aggression. He noted that their continued support for the Israeli occupation, so-called right to self-defense, effectively granting the Israeli occupation the justification to persist in its attacks and crimes against innocent civilians in Gaza. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The permanent representative of Palestine to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, has denounced the UN Security Council's passivity to date in the face of the Zionist aggression against the Gaza Strip, warning that from now on, it is the credibility of the international system that is at stake. More with Said Bougazi.
In 3 letters sent on Thursday to the UN Secretary General, the chairman of the Security Council this month, China, and the president of the UN General Assembly, Riyad Mansour, underlined that the credibility of the international system and its global laws are at stake, not only in Palestine, where civilians have not been protected since 7th October, but throughout the world. In this connection, he said that the continuing criminal aggression against Palestinian civilians and their property, as well as against hospitals and shelters for displaced persons, is a serious violation of international humanitarian law. Recording in this context that the occupying forces violently attacked the Al-Shifa hospital complex and terrorized the thousands of civilians who had taken refuge there, as well as patients and medical staff, the Palestinian representative to the UN denounced the deafening silence of the international community. Although this attack constitutes another war crime committed by the Zionist entity, the occupying power, it is still receiving preferential treatment, he deplored. Riyad Mansour added, "It seems clear that any crime, however serious, from ethnic cleansing to colonialism, apartheid and genocide, is not considered by the international community, including the Security Council, as sufficient to demand that the Zionist entity put an end to it." Reiterating his calls to protect the Palestinian people, especially the children who are living in hell in Gaza, Riyad Mansour said that demands for respect for international law, including humanitarian law, must be backed up by immediate and serious collective efforts.
The UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Health has expressed deep concern at the continued attacks, harassment and threats of violence against medical personnel and health facilities in the Gaza Strip, denouncing the deprivation of Gazans of their right to health guaranteed by international law. She said that these actions are contrary to the realization of the right of everyone to enjoy the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health as guaranteed by international law. And the Commissioner General of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, Filippo Lazzarini, has denounced that the number of United Nations employees killed in the Gaza Strip had risen to 103 since the beginning of the Zionist aggression on October 7. Lazzarini said in a message on the X platform, "Every day becomes a sad day for the United Nations, and UNRWA, with the number of our colleagues killed in Gaza, today 103 of them confirmed killed since October 7, as he put it. They were wonderful people," he said, who devoted their lives to serving their community. And still with the Palestinian thorny issue, the permanent representative of Malta to the United Nations, Vanessa Frazier, has said following the adoption of the Malta resolution by the Security Council that the situation in Gaza is very unique as it is a populated area with the majority being children. She said attacking children is illegal in international law.
The situation that we are confronted with here is unlike any other situation of conflict in the world. Gaza is densely populated, densely constructed, there are too many people living together in a very small area, and something else which is very unique is that 50% of that population are children. So this war and the conflict that is going on there has had a disproportionate impact on children, more than in any other conflict situation, which is why we decided to bring a resolution which is focused on the needs of children, particularly for this situation, and haven't taken this action on others, because this is a really particular and unique situation, and the children equals innocence. We know it, we all believe it, we believe it in whatever our religions are, and it is also stated in international law, and this is what we tried to bring forth today.
And regarding the Israeli occupation's rejection of the UN Security Council's resolution, the permanent representative of Malta to the United Nations said their statement is disappointing and controversial.
First of all, the Security Council is the highest body in multinational diplomacy, and the resolutions of the Council are immediately binding on all members. So it is very disappointing that this would be the initial reaction of Israel, especially since they have said that they are already abiding by the provisions of this resolution. Therefore, it should have been a continuation of what they are doing, if that was the case. So we hope that they take the time to read the resolution and to see what it says.
And that was a statement of permanent representative of Malta to the United Nations, Vanessa Frazier, following the decision of the UN Security Council to allow humanitarian pauses in Gaza. The United Nations World Food Programme has alerted the world to the immediate risk of famine in Gaza, where food and water are almost non-existent. The executive director of the Rome-based UN agency said with winter fast approaching, precarious and overcrowded shelters, as well as the lack of drinking water, civilians are facing an immediate risk of famine. She said there is no way to meet current food needs through a single operational border crossing, referring to aid transiting through the Rafah crossing. She added the only hope is to open another safe corridor for humanitarian aid to bring life-sustaining food to Gaza. And the Palestinian Prisoners Club has announced that the Israeli forces have arrested 85 Palestinians, bringing the total number of detainees in the occupied West Bank to 2,735 since October 7. The club said in a statement that the occupation forces have arrested at least 85 Palestinian citizens, including one girl, between Wednesday and Thursday at dawn in towns and villages in the West Bank, including East Al-Quds. And 33 UN rapporteurs have called on the international community to take urgent action to put an end to the collective genocide that the Israeli occupation has been committing with impunity since October 7 against the Palestinian people in Gaza and in the occupied West Bank. Saïd Bougazi.
The international community, including not only states but also non-state actors such as corporations, must do everything in their power to put an immediate end to the danger of genocide against the Palestinian people, put an end to the apartheid of the Zionist entity, and ultimately to the occupation of the Palestinian territories, the UN experts wrote in a joint statement released on Thursday evening. The experts underlined that all states must intervene in order to establish an immediate ceasefire, deploring that the international community has so far failed to prevent collective genocide in the Gaza Strip. In the same context, they pointed out that what is happening in Gaza is a great catastrophe with the unbearable pain and trauma experienced by the survivors. On the night of Thursday to Friday, dozens of Palestinians were martyred and others seriously injured in new massacres perpetrated by the Zionist occupation forces in the Jabalia refugee camp in the north of the Gaza Strip, reported the Wafa news agency. According to local Palestinian sources quoted by the Wafa agency, occupation warplanes bombed a residential area in Jabalia, causing dozens of martyrs. At least 11,660 Palestinians have been martyred and around 32,000 injured since the start of the Zionist entity's genocidal aggression in Gaza and the occupied West Bank on 7th October, according to a new provisional toll issued by the Palestinian Ministry of Health.
14 hours 46 minutes Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The High Commissioner for Human Rights has called for creating the political space for a path out of this horror, referring to the ongoing Israeli aggression on Gaza. He condemned the Israeli widespread targeting of civilians in the past 5 weeks of hostilities and urged accountability for gross rights violations. He stressed that attacks directed at hospitals, schools, markets and bakeries, as well as collective punishment in the case of the Israeli blockade and siege imposed on Gaza, are prohibited under international humanitarian law. And the heads of numerous United Nations agencies and other humanitarian organizations said Thursday they would not take part in Gaza safe zones declared by only one side in the conflict. They said in a joint statement, as humanitarian leaders, the position that they have is that they will not participate in the establishment of safe zones in Gaza that is set up without the agreement of all parties. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International and to Africa Now, where the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned against the high risk of a total collapse of Sudan or the outbreak of a global civil war. Guterres called on both parties to the conflict in Sudan to immediately stop the fighting and to commit to a permanent cessation of hostilities with a view to opening the way to a global dialogue, warning against the increased risk of a total collapse of Sudan. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, 14 hours 48 minutes Algiers time, and that's it for our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to a program devoted to Romans.
Hello and welcome to Discover Algeria, a weekly program in which we'll let you discover or know more about the Algerian heritage. Today we'll go back to the Roman period in Algeria to speak about a man of Berber origin born here in a Berber and later a Roman town called Teddis, now the municipality of Beni Hmidan, not far from the current city of Constantine. Speaking of Quirinus Lollius Urbicus, governor of Britain and builder of the Antonine Wall, intended to extend Roman territory and dominance by replacing Hadrian's Wall as the frontier of Britannia. The first investigations started here in Algeria after the French occupation. French and German savants began to investigate and record the main of Roman antiquity, and among another monument that cast a flood of light upon the early history of the Roman governor of Britain, namely Quirius Lollius Urbicus. It appears that the family to which Urbicus belonged was settled at or near the town of Tidis, now located in the eastern municipality of Beni Hmiden. It is situated on a hill or rising ground on the right bank of the river Rumel, not far from its confluence with the river Smendo, about 24 kilometers from Cirta, now Constantine, and at that time the chief city of the Roman province of Numidia, and supposed to have been the capital of the province under the Carthaginians. Tidis was a municipium or town in the Roman times and had decurions, political figure at the local level, for the management of its affairs. Many of the chief Roman families in and around Cirta belonged to one of the last formed tribes in the Roman Commonwealth, and to this tribe Lollius Urbicus belonged. Lollius Urbicus was the son of Marcus Lollius Senecio, who was probably a Numidian landowner, and his wife, Grania Honorata. The early senatorial career of Lollius Urbicus is known from a detailed inscription erected in his native Tidis. After military tribunate with the 22nd Legion at Mainz, he entered the Senate and served for a year as legate to the proconsul of Asia. He quickly rose to the prominence as the Emperor Hadrian's candidate and commanded the 10th Legion at Vienna. He was decorated for service as a legate during Hadrian's Jewish War of 132 to 135. His consulship can be placed in around 135 or 136, after which he governed Germania Inferior. He was transferred to Britannia soon after Hadrian's death. Quintus Lollius Urbicus was governor of Roman Britain between the years 139 and 142, during the reign of the Roman Emperor Antoninus Pius. He is named in the text known as the Augustan history, and his name appears on 5 Roman inscriptions from Britain, including the Romanium stone in High Rochester, discovered in 1852 by the then late Duke of Northumberland. Urbicus was sent to Britain as one of the first commissions of the Emperor Antoninus Pius, soon after he came to power in July AD 138. He evidently campaigned against several British tribes, possibly including factions of the northern Brigantes, and certainly against the lowland tribes of Scotland, and those of the Scottish border region, also the Damani of the Strathclyde and the Novantae of the Dumfries and Galloway. It seems likely that he personally campaigned with the 2nd Legion Augusta, as this unit is mentioned on 4 out of 5 inscriptions recording building work undertaken during his governorship. This legionary corps was no doubt backed up by a substantial contingent of auxiliary units, of which there are records of at least 1 per mounted regiment. Contingents from at least one other British legion are known to have assisted in the construction of the new turf barrier, as evidenced by an inscription from the fort of Old Kilpatrick, the Antonine Wall's western terminus. It seems likely that Urbicus planned his campaign of attack from Corbridge in Northumberland, just to the rear of Hadrian's Wall, as dedicatory inscriptions positively dated to the early 140s have been uncovered at the Antonine storage depot there. From here, he drove north-northwest into the Scottish borders along the Agricolan military road Deer Street, leaving garrison forts at High Rochester in Northumberland and possibly also at Newstead in Borders as he struck towards the Firth of Forth. Both of these sites were very likely used as bases from which to launch strikes against the lowland tribes, the Votadini to the east and to the Salgava to the west. The barrier he built was made of turf and timber, and stretching from 56 kilometers from east to west across the narrow neck of land separating the mighty rivers Forth and Clyde, nowadays known as the Antonine Wall. It was possibly after the defences were finished that Urbicus turned his attention upon the last lowland Scottish tribe, the Novantae, who inhabited the Dumfries and Galloway Peninsula. These four lowland tribes, sandwiched as they were between Hadrian's Wall of stone to the south and to the new turf wall of Antoninus to the north, later formed a confederation against Roman oppression, collectively known as the Mateat. According to the Augustan history, the Emperor Antoninus Pius defeated the Britons through the agency of the legate Lollius Urbicus. It seems that in a reversal of Hadrianic policy in Britain, he sent Lollius Urbicus to effect the reconquest of lowland Scotland. And according to Anthony Richard Burley, as Lollius Urbicus came from North Africa and born close to Cirta, the city of Cornelius Fronto, tutor to Marcus Aurelius, the personal link between him and Fronto played a part in his Pius's choice to lead the advance in North Britain. Anthony Richard Burley also suggested that Urbicus's commanding officer in the Jewish War may have played a part in his selection. Thus, it seems possible that Antonius Pius carefully chose men of his worn acquaintance for the honor of participating in the event, which was undertaken with the express purpose of achieving for him military prestige and thereby ensuring his challenge succession. It might also be remembered that the aristocracy of the Roman Empire was relatively small, and its members would have known each other or know of each other, while it was a society which relied heavily upon personal contacts and patronage. Between 139 and 140, Urbicus refurbished the fort of Corbridge in preparation for the move north of Hadrian's Wall, and commemorative coins were issued in 142, celebrating a victory in Britain. Urbicus returned to Rome with the prospects of the prestigious post of Praefectus Urbi, or the Prefect of Rome, which he probably held in 146 AD after the death of the incumbent Sepsius Clarus. He was perhaps the Prefect of Rome, who is known to have died in 160. Citing Urbicus's career inscription, Colin Wells offers an eloquent account of what today might be dubbed the multiculturalism and equal opportunity of life in the Roman Empire. He concludes that, quote, "At no other period of history could the second or third son of a Berber landowner from a very small town in the interior enjoy a career which took him to Asia, Judea, the Danube, the Lower Rhine, and Great Britain, culminating in a position of great power an honor in the capital of the empire to which all these regions belonged. Some remains of the Antonine Wall are still visible. Many of these have come under the care of Historic Scotland and the UNESCO World Heritage Committee.